to a fantastic edition of Rebellion's educational series. I'm here with Michael Pregent, a brilliant global strategist who's a Army intelligence officer, Middle East specialist, and today we're going to talk about the Iran war. Michael, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. First question: how do we know the Iranian people is up to the challenge?
Well, they've demonstrated that. Upwards of 30,000 have been killed by the regime for simply protesting for the freedom to not wear a hijab, the freedom to gather, the freedom to listen to music, the freedom not to be beat by the besieged on the streets. So they've already demonstrated that they are willing to die for this regime to go away. So this is the time and space that they've asked for. They asked the United States to start airstrikes. They asked the United States to target the leadership. Now is the time for the Iranian people to use this opportunity to change their government.
Wonderful. And do we have back channels to be able to supply them with arms?
We're still trying to identify. I imagine that's one of the number one focuses for not only the Mossad, but also for the U.S. Intelligence community is to find trusted groups on the ground that we can work with. We have plenty of experience of working with the wrong people, but I think at this point, paired up with the Mossad, we probably might get this right.
Hmm. How hand in hand are we working with Israel? I mean, do we know every mission that they do before they do it?
Well, I think Israel believes they have a green light from the United States to conduct their operations. The U.S. isn't pre-approving any targets. Israel has, the freedom of, you know, of targeting whatever they want to target. They own the skies. They've helped us own the skies. Israel and the U.S. have taken out Iran's air defense assets. Israel has intelligence assets on the ground. We have intelligence capabilities in the sky. In every shadow, whether it's Israel or the United States, we have the intelligence picture that we need to be able to conduct these operations and target regime leadership and regime military capabilities.
Well, would the regime's military defect eventually and give up, or do you think that they'll fight to the last man type situation?
No, I think there were schisms in the IRGC and the Sepah before that, the regular army. There's always competition. You always see reports of 1,500 officers being removed because they're either too extreme or they're challenging the supreme leader and they want to break away. So there are already schisms there. It's these opportunities that you have to be professional with when it comes to our human intelligence operatives, our assets on the ground, to be able to forge relationships that that are based on trust, right? Trust is based on frequency and proximity. The more somebody on the ground is being asked to do very hard things, very difficult things, they need to be able to reach out and touch an American or reach out and touch, a handler from whatever country, uh, and be able to have them be responsive. So that's an important part of this. When it comes to getting the regime, the IRGC to defect, that's exactly who need to defect. So we have to have immunity in place. One of the mistakes we made in the Iraq War is we basically said anyone who was a Ba'athist, whether you were a doctor, teacher, technocrat, you were no longer part of Iraq's future. You were no longer part of Iraq's polite society. You couldn't get employed. The de-Baathification experiment that we used in Iraq failed. We can't do that here. We have to offer immunity to IRGC members that are willing to defect, and we have to be able to select the talent, the charismatic talent of that group of defectors to lead the opposition to overthrow this regime.
I see. So, is there a country in the Gulf that could kind of be a dark horse as we have, of course, Israel and the US are steadfast allies, but could there become a third player? Could Saudi Arabia or UAE step up when it comes to Iran, or do you think it'll just be the two countries going it alone?
Well, it has to be the two countries that the Iranian people have the most faith in, and that's going to be the United States and that's going to be Israel, which is very surprising how much uh, popular support there is for what Israel is doing inside of Iran when it comes to the Iranian people. Taking out the supreme leader was initially the media said that it was Israel that did that. And now we know it was both the United States and Israel that did that.
Um,
But there weren't protests on the streets. They're okay with Israel and the U.S. participating inside of Iran. And if you look at the celebrations in London and other places where you have Iranians and Jews, pro-Israel
well,
Americans and Jews together celebrating the demise of the supreme leader.
a journalist in Iran who I've been friends with for a few years thinks that there's a chance Netanyahu will send in troops, boots on the ground. Is that any possibility or not really?
Well, if he does put boots on the ground, I'm sure there's plenty of Farsi and Arabic speaking uh, professionals inside of the Israeli Defense Forces and inside of its intelligence apparatus. The United States doesn't have that. We tend to uh, ask people, hey, can you speak Farsi? And then we make them a translator. And then they go with us and they may or may not actually support the regime sometimes. We saw that in Iraq. We saw that in Afghanistan when we had green on blue attacks is basically a person from the country that we're working with that turns against us and kills an American. So Israel will have a better experience at that. We have to look at what the IRGC did when it came to Arab countries. They would use Lebanese Hezbollah to translate for them when they dealt with the Iraqi militias or when they worked with the Houthis. Hezbollah was their conduit. We need to find a conduit like that. It may be Jordanian special forces that would be able to help us out with this. They're very good. Maybe Egyptian special forces. But we need Farsi speakers. We need Farsi English speakers that can help with building that trust between a uniformed military person, whether it's from Israel or the United States, dealing with somebody that we're trying to get to do very difficult things.
Do you think Palantir has changed the way military is conducting their operations? Have they changed the game, so to speak?
I used Palantir when I was at CENTCOM, and you know it's evolved since then. But I love the way it was able to pull all of these intelligence disciplines together and give us a good intel picture. So it is a tool. Uh, but when it comes to this kind of warfare at this point, when you're looking at the IRGC starting to wear civilian clothes and blend into the local population and use schools and mosques, it becomes a eyes on the ground kind of war. You have to make sure the decisions you're making when you drop steel on target, the eyes that are telling you that that is an enemy target are on the ground and they're trusted. And at that point, it's qualified sources or it's actual U.S. military uh, personnel on the ground that know how to do call for fires, meaning they know how to talk to a pilot to have them drop ordnance, and the same thing with Israel. So I think we get away from the technical aspect of war after the static targets have been taken out, and it becomes a very human on human interaction, and it has to be successful in order for it to pay off.
China has called for a ceasefire when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, or at least, a non-closure, if you will.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen there? When will Strait of Hormuz be safe for tanker passage?
Well, apparently China's getting through. China's got the green light, so I think everybody should buy a Chinese flag and display them on your tanker. So we have to look at the economic impact to Russia and China. They're affected the most by the Strait of Hormuz being shut down. There are other countries that can produce oil and gas, the US being one of them. So this may be an advantage for the United States, but again, for Europe that's been so dependent on Russian oil and gas, this becomes a problem. So if China's telling Iran not to do it and Russia's telling Iran not to do it, that's a good thing for everybody. Well, at least for the international community and international commerce. But if they're the only tankers getting out, then that's when the U.S. Navy should actually say,
Right.
okay, no, no one's getting out if they're getting out.
And in regards to our stockpiles of missiles and weapons, are you worried about that? Many people talking about Ukraine and our depleted forces.
Well, that's the beauty of being a capitalist society. When there's a supply issue, a demand issue, we take care of it. You know, people were talking. I was on a debate with some individuals that said, you know, it would take a U.S. defense contractor a month to produce one system. Well, The launcher, yes. The rockets and the missiles, no. That can be made quicker. We have countries in the region that already produce these munitions. So it is that's an argument on the other side that we shouldn't do this because we're going to exhaust everything. We should be focused on China. I don't think anything that we're doing with China is going to be a shooting war right now. It's going to be more about whether or not we're able to influence countries the way China does. China basically is a hostile lender to countries. Uh, we make sure the country, comports with all you know, human rights standards before we lend it money. So we need, that's a different conversation. But, the arguments of those that don't want this to happen, I support the Operation Epic Fury because Iran's been contributing to our forever wars for the last since 9/11. From hosting Al Qaeda to paying Al Qaeda, Shia militias, the Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, Haqqani Network. Everywhere we've been, Iran has somehow been behind our adversaries being more lethal at what they do when they attack. So, this is day 4 now, going into day
Uh,
5.
well, also, may I interrupt you? Are you worried about Hezbollah?
Yeah, Hezbollah. I'm not worried about Hezbollah in Lebanon. I'm worried about cells here in the United States. We had a lone wolf attack in Austin, Texas. But there are cells here in the United States that are 10-man teams that are able to conduct assassinations, able to assemble roadside bombs, able to conduct small-scale October 7th style attacks, not only here in the United States, but wherever American tourists are. So that's why the
Uh,
State Department issued that big warning to all these Americans. Hey, keep a low profile in this country. There's a kidnapping risk, a hostage taking risk in this country. There's a risk of
yeah.
being, killed by a Shahad drone in this country. So Americans everywhere, here at home and abroad, should stay vigilant. And, if you see something, say something.
Libya went after Pan Am Flight 103 and obviously successfully brought that down. Is that something we need to worry about? Or Iran sending cells out after our planes?
It's not really Iran's tactic to do that kind of thing. It's more of a you know targeted assassinations, uh, attacking U.S. infrastructure, symbolic attacks here in the United States to make us feel what they're feeling. As far as taking out, that's more of an Al Qaeda, ISIS type attack. Doesn't mean they wouldn't do it, and doesn't
Yeah.
mean they wouldn't pay one of these Sunni groups to do it. And one of these Sunni groups, uh, they're already trying to do that absent this operation inside of Iran. They were already trying to bypass TSA countermeasures to get something like that on board. So everyone's looking at that already.
What do you think the odds are we're successful with this mission versus just eventually pulling out and saying, okay, we've pushed them back, 8 years, 6 years, nuclear front, you know, job well done.
Right. So regime change is probably number 4 or 5 down the list, right? So it's negating their, ability to create a nuclear bomb by destroying those nuclear sites and continuing to go after any air defense assets that are trying to protect anything related to their nuclear program. The second issue is ballistic missiles. We're going after munition sites, we're going after launchers. They're exhausting their stockpile as well. They have a lot of rockets and missiles and drones, but we are targeting launchers. They need launchers to be able to
Yep.
launch the rockets and missiles. And the drones are probably going to be the number one menacing problem for the next 30 to 60 days if this operation continues. But the
Yep.
president, if he stops, will be able to say, we set back Iran's nuclear program a decade. We degraded its ballistic missile capabilities. We degraded its drone capabilities, and we've
No.
increased sanctions on Iran, and we made it hard for them to fund
No.
terrorist organizations. And every one of the terrorist proxies that they fund has been degraded severely by Israeli airstrikes.
No. Yeah, I've read 30,000 drones in storage in Iran. Does that sound correct to
Yeah,
you?
yeah, that's a conservative number.
Okay.
Um, they're relatively inexpensive. They make them daily. They make about a
No.
hundred a day,
Yeah.
and they've been exporting them, of course, to the Russia-Ukraine theater for Russia's use. The good thing is Ukraine has taught the world on how to counter
Yeah.
these drones, and it's not hard to take them down. They already have a 30% fail rate just falling out of the sky,
Yeah.
and the other fail rate is about 60 to 70. It's 70 to 80% fail rate based on any sort of ADA fire towards them. But those 20% that get through, they hit embassies, they can kill Americans like they did in Bahrain. Uh, it's a menace.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. As always, fantastic conversation.
Thanks for having me.
You stay safe.
You too. Thanks.